Well, Darian Devries dropped another bomb on us today. West Virginia has lost yet another player for the season, and right before we play the Utah Utes of all teams.
You are Locked On West Virginia, your daily podcast on the West Virginia Mountaineers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what is up? Welcome back in, guys. My name is Mountaineer Paul. I am your host. This is Locked On West Virginia, the place where we talk about Mountaineer everything, Mountaineer football, Mountaineer basketball. We love the Mountaineers here. This episode is going to be brought to you by FanDuel, guys. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you get $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Thanks for being Locked On West Virginia, your first listen, guys, and being part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We talk about your team every single day. If you can't tell, I got a new setup going on here, trying something new out. Apologies if the camera has focusing issues. I will get that fixed. But for now, we've got something important. We've got a great guest to come on to talk about this game upcoming this weekend. We will get into the Jayden Stone topic. But before we do that, obviously, let's bring in a guy that covers the Utah Utes and I think other teams in the college basketball space, Andrew Crowley from, how do you say it? Runnin Hoops. That's what it is.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'd get sued.
You can't go Runnin Rebels.
Yeah, or Runnin Utes, you know.
Yeah, or Runnin Utes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me get this. There we go. That's the right one. I told you guys earlier with this new setup, I'm trying to figure out which buttons are what here. I'm used to my laptop. So right before we came on, Andrew, Darian Devries confirmed. This is the second time in a week West Virginia is confirming, and this is not – so we've been playing without these players. But obviously Tucker Devries, Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year 2 years in a row, was a huge loss. We just found out he was redshirting medically for the year, needs surgery. Detroit Mercy guard, 20 points per game scorer, Jayden Stone, now out. Going to also just redshirt, not medically. Although that's a very it's a lot to unpack with what happened to him. It was very scary for a lot of people around, and it's not fully public, so I won't dive all the way in. But there's a lot going on there with that. So what's your initial reaction to news like that? For you, you can look at it from Utah's point of view, West Virginia's point of view, just generally. Do you think that can kind of put the damper on a team, or do you think it can galvanize them?
It can be pretty deflating. I mean, at Utah, we've dealt with injuries, severe injuries the last few years. We lost our point guard, Raleigh Wooster, last year, right about this time, to an injury, and really kind of derailed our tournament chances. You mentioned you guys have been playing without these two guys, but I mean, I know Stone. I mean, he's a guy that we kicked the tires on out of the transfer portal as well, and a guy that our fan base would have been excited to have. And so it certainly can be deflating. But when you've got a guy like Javon Small, I think you're probably in just about every game that you play. So that's the silver lining, I would say, for West Virginia fans.
It is. And definitely the two differences between the teams absolutely is Utah has a decent record right now, but hasn't beat any really great teams yet. And West Virginia has a just one game lesser record, but has beaten a bunch of good teams. And it's kind of hard to put based on how West Virginia is playing now. It's like, okay, is this the team that's beating all these good teams, or are they cratering? And is Utah kind of trying to pick up, because they've lost a few games here lately that were really close games. They really played some teams tough, lost them in the second half. They've had some blowouts. There's been a mixture of a little bit of everything for Utah. But, I mean, they're coming off a win against Colorado, and that can be a tough team to beat.
Yeah, it's been a real inconsistent season for the Runnin Utes. Their first chance of the year was against Mississippi State. They had an 11-point lead at halftime, blew it. They had St. Mary's in their own building, didn't really show up for that one. had a lead on Iowa, lost that, and it's kind of been a rinse and repeat thing for Utah this year. You mentioned got back in the win column against Colorado after a tough road game at Oklahoma State. They've not been very good on the road here. So, if they're going to go into Morgantown and get a win, they're going to have to do some uncharacteristic things.
Understood. And I firmly believe we're one of the 3 hardest places to play in the league. We pack 14,000 people in that place, and it's going to be a coal rush. So there's a lot going for us in that building, and there's a lot of juice there when we're winning. And like you mentioned, Javon Small and others, I'm curious. So you mentioned that inconsistency, but I mean, you guys have been in some games here this year that I necessarily wouldn't say that like you guys have been in some games. What do you think the key win this season for Utah is? Do they have a signature win?
It's probably, from a metrics perspective, it's probably the road win at TCU is their signature win. And then they outlasted their rivals, BYU, at home in a big time environment, big time game. It's kind of one of the only games that just about everybody in the state shows up for to watch. And so, that was a game that went into overtime, I believe. And just, Utah was just one basket better. But I would say those 2 were probably the signature wins. The
3
non-conference wins are pretty pedestrian.
Yeah. That was the end of a 3-game stretch there where you guys have won 3 in a row. I bet you probably felt like there may be something to turn there.
Yeah.
But
sure.
the thing is when you have to play Houston after all that, nothing matters. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah, it was get your celebrations in now because we're going to Houston.
Yeah. Nobody likes that trip to Houston. Juwan Roberts, and all those guys, man. Roberts was the biggest problem for us when we played him. He's just such a good player, such a physical player. He's got arms that are like 7'1", 7'2", even though he's only 6'9".
Yeah.
He blocks a ton of shots because a lot of things West Virginia does is at the rim. And Javon Small gets to the rim. He floats through the air, does amazing things, and gets his teammates involved. And if there's a really good rim protector, West Virginia can get in some trouble there. So in the next segment, we're going to get into some of that. Before we move into this next segment, can you give me some strengths of the overall team without getting into some overall players? We'll do that in the next segment.
Yeah, so this is a really good passing team. When they're in the top, I don't want to say they're in the top 5 in the country. Maybe it's top 10 at this point, but they have been in the top 3 most of the year in assists per game.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, up close to 20 per game. And so it's one of those things. It's like when they're sharing the ball, they are very difficult to handle. They do have some good rim protection inside, and at times have been a good 3-point shooting team, though that has tapered off here, as we've gotten into Big 12 play and playing some of these tough road environments.
I know they got some guys that shoot the heck out of the 3. I mean, from a usage standpoint, I think I've seen one guy shoots 9 a game. Another guy shoots 5 a game. Yep. They're both in the low 30s. So it's not like they make a ton, but like they seem to be streaky players because I went and looked into it. And that's an interesting scenario. Let's talk about them next because I think, getting into some of the matchups in this game is kind of where the fun lies, especially if you're a basketball fan. So stick around here with us, guys. We'll talk about the matchups. Who are the impact players for West Virginia? We'll do us, and we'll talk about Utah. I'll be right back with Andrew Crowley right after the break, right here on Locked On West Virginia, guys. Stick around. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is brought to you by Prize Picks. The big-time game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it fun and simple to get in on the action. Here's how it works. You can make more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. Prize Picks has even a free pick for the big game where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. This week, I'm looking at the board and selecting more for Travis Kelce on the receiving yards and more for quarterbacks passing yardage. What I love most, fast, safe withdrawals when I win. My cash is in my account in as little as 15 minutes. Check out the promos tab to tell any of my super sweet Millie winners for the big game lineups. If you tell the lineup or goes free for 3 for 3, you can split $1 million in promo funds. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play our first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's at Prize Picks. Run your game. And we are back here on Locked On West Virginia with Andrew Crowley from Runnin Hoops. Okay, so let's talk about individual players now, man. Thanks for being patient. Let me tease that in. You guys, you mentioned you had some rim protection. I noticed you guys have some rather large guys down low, 6'9" or better. A couple of those guys. Who is the better rim protector of those guys?
So Lawson Lovering's our 7'1" center, transferred in from Colorado a couple seasons ago. He's a senior, really, really good rim protector, long. If they can anchor him in the paint, he's tough to get through. And then you mentioned we've got a big lineup. Craig Smith, our head coach, has really kind of leaned into that over the last, handful of games, just kind of decided, look, we're a big team and we're going to play big. So you've got Lawson, Lovering, Ezra Asar, who transferred in from East Carolina, and then Jake Wallin plays our 3, and he's another 6'9" guy as well. So there's a lot of length and versatility there in the front line.
Absolutely there is. And another thing I wanted to get into really quick before we break any more of this team down, which is, if it had the Jayden Stone news breaking right before we came on threw me off. I meant to lead with Josh Eiler, who is obviously on staff, obviously was a Bob Huggins guy for 17 years and was thrown into the most impossible situation. I don't know if you've actually looked into what he had to go through.
Oh, yeah.
Like detailed it. In my entire life, and I mean this genuinely, I've never seen a situation play out as badly as that. Not only did Bob Huggins get fired or, basically fired, then they put him in for the year as interim. They lost everybody. At the very end, they leveraged themselves against the portal as a ransom, and then most of them still transferred. So what leftovers he had to build a roster in 1 year with they had already shopped the portal by then. They were Huggins guys that left. And then he was left and had a bunch of first-year coaches. They were every single one of them almost, except for 2 guys, were their first year ever as a college basketball coach. And here he is as an interim coach trying to manage that situation. Then the Raekwon Battle situation happened. They had to go to court to try to get him eligible in the middle of the season, and that's when they made everybody eligible because of that ruling. I mean, it was just one thing after another. Jose Perez, got kicked off the team right at the very end. I mean, it just go on and on and on. I had it written down one time. It was like 37 or 38 different things that would be major in any other season. So, he didn't get a good, in my opinion, tryout as a coach. Yeah. And he was never going to be the guy that replaced Bob Huggins. They always had their sights set on somebody with more experience like Devries. What has he been like for you guys? Because he's an excellent character guy. He's a very good defensive, at least at West Virginia, he was good at putting together defenses. Do you know what he's been doing at Utah, and what's the reception been like?
Yeah, I had him on my podcast when he came in and joined the staff, and he was great. Very nice guy, knows the game, obviously. He's been working primarily, I think, with our bigs. And so he's given the bigs, I think, a little bit different look. He's, as you know, he's a bigger guy, a little bit thicker, right? And so he's able to provide a little bit more resistance in practice than I think they're used to, right? Get some of that Big 12 girth in there as well. But he does a little bit of everything. I think, his 16 years in Morgantown, he did just about every job that you could have. And so I think he's brought a lot of really good experience and kind of a steady hand on our coaching staff, somebody who's been through that Big 12 rigor. You know, he was telling me that his first game in the Big 12 as a coach, I think, was at Houston, and so he got thrown right into the fire.
Yeah, it was.
You know, but he's been a fantastic addition to the staff at Utah.
And, you know, obviously you learn a lot from Bob Huggins over the course of 17 years. Did you ask him any questions about that?
I did, yeah. And now everything that he told me is escaping me. But
well, I'll put you on the spot.
Right on the spot. But I mean, you know, I think, you know, the typical things, right, that you would learn at the feet of a legend, right? We had one 20 years ago in Rick Majerus. And, you know, you just can't there's a lot of stuff there that you just can't teach, and you almost can't even articulate. But just how you go about your business, you know, the whole Press Virginia thing, right? The 40 minutes of hell, right? That's all Bob Huggins stuff. And I think he's brought a lot of that to Utah to help the players play with a little bit more of an edge than they have in the past.
Yeah, he would know what it looks like. You know, that's what I always say. Like, whenever you're bringing a player in from the portal, or wherever you're bringing in, you know, anybody, and you're trying to get to something, I think it's always important if they know what that looks like. If you're bringing in a player, if you want to win the Big 12 and you bring in a player that's won conference championships at another conference or another team, they know what it looks like. Yep. They know what a team looks like when they're in that mode. And it's important to have people like that on the team because they can identify when it's not going that direction. So I think Eilert's a guy definitely dialed into the toughness, especially in the physicality and the whole hard edge thing that Huggs had. So I think it's going to be interesting to him come back to Morgantown. I hope he gets a great reception. There's no reason he shouldn't. And I hope they do something special for him because he really took it on the chin for us. He could have easily said no to that. Obviously, it was a good payday. But, I mean, you know, that was a career. It could have hurt. Actually, probably could have hurt his career. It went so badly.
Yeah.
You know, like I've talked to other staff members on that staff. They all knew it wasn't going to. It was a basically no-win situation. So I just, you know, I think he deserves a lot of flowers to being so loyal to the university, so loyal to us, and I really hope that he gets another job, whether it's Group of 5 or even FCS, something for him to start over as a head coach and run his own program because he deserves it.
Yeah, for sure. He's been, you know, nothing but great. And you know, it's funny. We in our non-conference, all of our games were on ESPN Plus, and so, you know, they had these local guys interview the coach at halftime, and sometimes it was Josh that they would interview, and you could just tell the intensity that guy operates with. You know, like, hey, Josh, you know, you guys are up, you know, 13 at the half. You know, what's going well? And he's like, well, we're not doing this. We're not doing that. You know, and so he's certainly got the makeup, I think, to be a good head coach.
For sure.
On the road.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell my listening audience. It's segment 2. We cracked a dew. I know I'm not supposed to be drinking it, but I did it anyway. So that's something we do in segment 2. How's this team going to stop Javon Small?
I mean, if the referees would let him have 7 on the court,
yeah,
I think that would help. So I did a preview of West Virginia on my podcast, and he actually reminds me a lot of a guy that played at Utah named DeLon Wright, who's in the NBA, and he's a little bit shorter, but he's a lot thicker, and he's just kind of a bowling ball. I think they're going to have a tough time stopping him. You know, they're probably going to have to double him and try to get the ball out of his hands.
What everybody else does.
Yeah, as much as possible. Probably isn't going to work. You know, Utah has been shaky in late clock situations, allowing guys to get to the rim.
That's what he's so good at.
You know, yeah. So that worries me a lot with Javon Small. He's
literally the best I've seen at that. At West Virginia in a long time. A late clock situation, he's a big game performer. Wants it when the game's on the line. You know, his comp, the best comp I've seen him get, and this is like most of the time you would kind of what at this, but like so far 3 separate TV announcers have comped him to Chris Paul.
Okay.
And I think it's a good comp. Obviously, I don't think he's quite the scorer Chris Paul was. I don't. Maybe he'll turn into that. I think he's a good college comp to him. He's got that bounce. He's got the handle. And then at the rim, what he does so well is he floats through the air, gets contact, and then scores so well, which is why I was asking about your rim protection, because the teams that have beaten us this year have had great rim protection either at the rim or they've had a great perimeter, and he's had to give the ball up early. And what a lot of teams do, because he plays so many minutes, is they just kind of they'll start at the other end of the court and make him take 10 seconds getting it down so he gets started and initiate that offense late. There's a bunch of different strategies teams have tried. It's crazy how many people double off the ball screen as well, because we're such a heavy ball screen team. You guys don't do any ball screens at all, I've noticed.
Defensively or offensively?
Offensively.
Yeah, they try. It's a bit of a free-flowing offense that Craig Smith runs. It's sort of the headline about Utah's offense is it's quote free-flowing, and they try to do some of that ball screen stuff. They get guys kind of packed in on one side of the court. They just don't execute it very well. Is kind of the bottom line. But yeah,
is that a coaching thing in your opinion or a player thing?
A little bit of both. I think that they need to run more sets on the offensive side, just because they've had 10 new players into the program this offseason, and it's just taken them a long time to kind of get to figure out what the strengths of everybody are. Gabe Madsen, who I'm sure we'll talk about, he kind of came into the season as our number one,
right?
As a shooting guard. He's struggled this year from, in that role because he's getting more of the focus of the defense. And so they have a tough time with guys that, we don't have a lot of guys that can get their own shot, I guess I should say. The way that like a Javon Small could late in the clock, when the game is, money time, they just have a tough time doing that. So it's a challenge for sure.
And that makes sense. I can see why you would be worried in that situation. We've had situations like that before. Let's go to break real quick, and we'll talk about Madsen because he is a scorer, just a little bit differently, like you said. Maybe not getting his own shot as much, but we'll talk about that next. Stick around, guys. We'll go to our last break. We'll be right back. I'm also going to do a score prediction, so we'll do that too. We'll be right back, guys. This is Locked On West Virginia. And this episode of Locked On West Virginia is also going to be brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting that first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's the icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, an official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, Andrew, back with Andrew Crowley with Runnin Hoops. Before we get started on this last segment, let everybody know what you're doing, what you're up to, where they can find you, man.
Yeah, so it's the Runnin Hoops Podcast. It's wherever you get a podcast, and you can find me over on X at Runnin Hoops. Cover Utah basketball, obviously in depth, and then the rest of the Big 12 as well. Just really am enjoying this first year in the Big 12 conference, despite the slog that it is, it's a tough game every single night in this league. But yeah, over at Runnin Hoops on Twitter. And again, of course, appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And we've got a few hundred of you watching over on X. So if you're over there right now, go check him out on Runnin Hoops, guys. Definitely make sure you give him a follow, because don't forget, Utah comes to Morgantown in football, and I will be there this year. So that's another one that I'll have a couple people on that week, because that's an exciting week. I don't think we've ever met in football that I can remember. I haven't looked it up for sure, but we have. It's not been the last 40 years. So
they met in a bowl game in Dallas a few years ago.
Yeah, I mean regular season. Sorry,
regular season.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that. But yeah, as far as like obviously never been in the same conference or anything.
No,
this is very out of the norm. So, and you guys are going to be coming to Morgantown. Hopefully, it's going to be nice and cold. Which you guys are kind of used to that though. So it's not like a typical Western team. But we're getting off track. You mentioned. You guys have a couple guards though that can fill it up at times. You mentioned Madsen, Little, and a couple other guys. Looks like Madsen. Is that Madsen's brother Mason on the team as well?
Yeah. So we got the Madsen twins.
Yeah, that's what I see that.
Yeah. So Gabe Madsen's been in the program for about 4 years. He transferred in from Cincinnati.
That's where that name's familiar.
Yeah, after the COVID season. Mason played a year at Cincinnati, then went to Boston College, and he's at Utah now for his last season to play with Gabe. And, when those two guys are going, they're a pretty tough duo to stop from behind the line. And like I've mentioned before that, Gabe has struggled a little bit with his shot this year, but he's starting to maybe round into form here a little bit. And so if he can see one or two go down early in this game, it's a good sign for Utah. If he struggles from deep, it could be a bad sign for Utah.
Well, West Virginia has one of the best on-ball defenders in all of college basketball, and Sincere Harris, you'll definitely see him on what day of the week is it? Saturday, yeah. He is one crazy guy, man. He is well, I'll tell you this. We've had some of the best defenders in the history of the Big 12 in our program. Javon Carter was obviously a back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year, and plays well. He's a good NBA player as we speak. We've had a few other guys that have been really good. Sekwa Konate obviously was one of the best shot blockers I've ever seen, 9-10 blocks in a game versus Kansas. Sincere Harris has a chance to be better than all of them. And I never thought that would come out of my mouth. I don't know if he'll ever, go to the heights of a Javon Carter, but I think he is the leader of what is a top 20 3-point percentage defensive team. They are really good against the three, but I think the team's getting worn down a little bit. And this is my big fear for the season, and it has been most of the season. This team plays with 6-7 guys, and they have others. They're just not comparable or capable to play at the level Darian Devries wants. And so we play with this short roster and bench. And, we've got 2 bigs that we play with, and we've got 4 guards that we play with and 2 wings that we play with. And that's kind of where we're at. I just worry that they're not able to, because we peaked, obviously. We've got 3 wins against top 10 opponents. And, a lot of us thought when we were at about 13 wins that we were maybe going to get to 24, 25 because of this back into the schedule. I mean, when you're at 13, 14 wins and you've already beaten Kansas, Gonzaga, and Arizona, you feel pretty good about the rest of the season. It just hadn't worked out like that. You losing games to K-State and Cincinnati, or not Cincinnati, but TCU now. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's will be a good barometer to see if maybe there was just a little bit of a slump. Maybe they can get into a peak here the last month of the season. And I think it's going to be fun to watch. A couple people I'll go ahead and do a couple impact players of West Virginia and then name a couple keys. And then if you have a couple keys for the game that you think are important, we can do that really quick. By the way, if you can tell, I'm a fly by the seat of my pants kind of guy. So I think in this game, it's going to be really important for West Virginia to get secondary scoring. It has been all year. We had hoped Toby Oconee would be that at times. Powell has been that at times. Jonathan Powell is a true freshman, top 40 player that we flipped from Xavier at the very last minute. And there have been games where he's been far and away the second best player on the floor next to Javon. And it's such a great pairing because Javon gets in the lane and he is very much a spot-up shooter. but he's had some really bad slumps this year. This last game was one of them. There are games where he makes 4 or 5. It's just one of those things where he's a freshman. Jonathan Powell has to make, in my opinion, at least 3 threes in this game, or West Virginia has to get close to that 10 per game if they were averaging. It's a big part of the offense. Second key to the game is, I think, with Sincere and Toby, where they're both really great wing defenders, I think they're going to have to clamp down the three-point line in this game against a team that really wants to shoot a lot of threes, or at least 2 guys you have want to shoot threes. 2 guys you have want to shoot a lot. And then I'm going to be interested to see how Amani Hansberry and Eduardo Andre, our 2 bigs, perform against some of your bigger guys, because you have a bigger lineup than us in the backcourt or in front court. So I think we're going to be okay there, but it certainly could. If you guys have the one guy, who's the guy that you have that is has a little bit of a post-up game? His name slips my mind.
Ezra Azar.
Yes, Azar. He's got a little bit of a post-up game to him, and we have struggled with guys that can catch the ball in the block and score this year. So those will be my keys. And I will predict the game at I'll say West Virginia wins this game. I still think we're a better team at this point, even though we feel a little shorthanded. I'll say 69-60.
Yeah, I think the key for me for Utah is turnovers. In their 5 Big 12 road games, the only one they won was TCU, where they had a low turnover rate, but every other game they played, they were up in the high teens and 20s in turnovers for like 20 points for the opponent. The first 5 minutes or so of this game are going to be very telling. Utah has a tough time getting off the bus on the road sometimes. Right. And so if West Virginia comes out and really presses them and really, kind of gets up in their face defensively, forces a few early turnovers, they really
That's what we do.
Yeah, and they really struggle to overcome stuff like that. And so, Utah's going to have to take care of the ball, I think, for this to even be a game down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Ezra,
a bad matchup or something?
What's that?
You think it's just a bad matchup for you guys, the way we play?
No, I just think that we don't play well on the road.
It's just one of what you remind me of? Towards the end of the Neil Brown tenure, we went 6 years, and he never won against the top 25 team ever.
Yeah.
And on the road, it was even worse.
Yeah.
So you remind me of me at the end of his tenure, just literally no faith, literally none, 0% chance I felt like we were going to win any road games.
And I'm one of the more positive people in the fan base. So I think that probably tells you where things are at. It's just, they went and played, a very winnable game at Oklahoma State.
Very winnable. Yeah,
they got down 12-1 early, 12-3 early, and just never really recovered from that. And so, they're not the fastest starting team anyway, but you can't go on the road in the Big 12 and just hand the ball to your opponent in the first, 5 minutes or so, because that crowd's going to get on them. Like you mentioned, they're wearing those Cole.
It's going to be big. Yeah, the Cole rush is a big deal for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
a hill to climb. I think that's for sure.
And you're coming to the mountains, so it's funny. We have a thing called Law School Hill that they all make them run up over there. So that's what that reminds me of. You guys might be having a law school hill to climb. So you got a score and prediction for this game, or score?
Yeah.
You afraid to put it out there?
I'm afraid to put it out there. I mean,
you don't have to.
I think West Virginia probably ends up winning, and I think that the spread over at Ken Palm is like 9 or 10, and that seems about right to me. I'd love for it to be a game with 4 minutes to go. I'd love for it to be a battle. I think Utah's capable of making it a battle, but we just haven't seen it yet this year on the road. So, I'd put it somewhere in that 70-60 sort of range as well.
Yeah, and West Virginia is very desperate right now because they've lost some games they shouldn't have lost. I I think they're dealing with the losses of their their brethren harsh. They're expecting some of them, one of those guys to come back, I think. And it's just the wear and tear of the season on the shorthanded team. So I think the being at home is obviously going to help with that, especially there's going to be a lot of juice in there. And it's a really loud place. So I appreciate you for coming on, man. It's been fun talking with you. Sorry about the camera issues and everything. This is a whole new setup for me. I will get it optimized and fixed, but I wanted to try it out and see how it looked. I do like it. I just want it to be a little further away, but we'll get it fixed. One more time before you go, if you don't care, Andrew, let's tell everybody one more time before you get off here where they can find you, because we got kind of a little bit of a surge here at the end, almost 300 people. Yeah,
at Runnin Hoops over on X, and Runnin Hoops Podcast, wherever you get a podcast. I try to get 2 or so episodes out a week during the season. We cover every game that Utah plays, and we cover the Big 12 kind of in a whip around fashion, and then other big topics in college basketball as well. So would love to get some listeners in from Morgantown, that's for sure, especially with you guys coming back to Salt Lake in March.
You guys, you're in my Discord. Give him a follow for me, at least a few of you. Jump in. He's a good dude, so I'd appreciate that from you. And let me know in the Discord if you did do that, and I'll raffle off a $20 giveaway if you do that for me. So let me know in Discord if you followed Andrew, and I'll give away $20 today and post proof. All right, guys, I appreciate you all very much for joining this episode. Like I said, make sure to follow Andrew. If you're listening on podcast, follow Andrew on podcast. Follow me on podcast at Locked On West Virginia. Subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys on the next one. West Virginia's versus Utah could be a good game. It could be a blowout. Either way, I'll have a post game afterwards, and I'll see you then. I'll talk to you on the next one, guys. For Andrew, for me, we're out of here.